Can anyone catch them, do you think?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, unbelievable. We didn't expect that.
As unbelievable as it sounds, this is another Arsenal podcast. That is the Away Gooners podcast. We bring news and reaction from Arsenal fans from all over the world. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Away Gooners podcast. I know this is something that we have been we have been avoiding to talk about the review of the Chelsea game that we had recently. So let's start with something very simple, right? Like, what are your guys' reaction? Because let me start it this way, right? We have not traditionally won against Chelsea. It's not a fixture that we have always won against them, even when we were finishing in top four. And right now, Chelsea is at the top of their game, which means they are the champions of Champions League, right? Does this compartmentalization come into your view of looking at the game, or are you still thinking like, no, we should be able to, do something about this game? I'll start with Arun.
No, if you want me to compartmentalize and talk, you make my job really, very easy. If I were to talk about it as a Chelsea versus Arsenal game, as the champions of Europe against a team that is struggling, yeah, it made it look like a game of boys versus men. We were basically like schooled by Chelsea. And it was a case where they basically stopped playing after a point, and even then we couldn't do anything. So maybe we could have shown something on the pitch that would give some hope to the fans for the upcoming games, but I do not know if we could have done anything in there that would make the result favorable. Could have made the result favorable for us. Chelsea never gave us any opportunities, and that showed how good they were, how tight they were. So yeah, for me, boys versus men.
Okay, so Deepak,
schoolboys versus men, yeah.
School. I mean, literally, that is the truth, right? I mean, we had a squad that is literally schoolboys. We all our what do you call it? All our experienced players are already injured or not available. Like Aubameyang, Lacazette, Partey. Those are the experienced members in the squad. Not let alone the first 11 or whether they're playing good or whatever. But they are the experienced members, age-wise, in the squad. And we had none of them. Apart from Xhaka and Leno, there was no experience on the pitch, on the squad. Does that somehow influence the way you are looking at the game, Deepak, or you're not considering that?
No. We had literally I think there were just two changes to the team which beat Chelsea last season 3-1. And it was the same team. The only difference is Chelsea has a different manager and we have the same manager. And we haven't
and Lukaku, you're missing, right? Lukaku.
Whatever, even if Lukaku wasn't playing, we would have lost. The thing is Chelsea has moved forward and we have stuck there, or we have even fallen behind from where we were last season. That's the bitter truth, I would say. So I told you I was confident enough that we would win at least 1-0 or 1-1, given the form we were against Chelsea for the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Historically we are bad. Leave it. But for the past 2 seasons we have been playing well against them. But I was confident enough. But we tried for the first 10 minutes, and once. Mari got bullied by Lukaku literally. We went what is that? That donut of side passing.
The donut of sadness.
The donut of sadness.
Donut passing that kicked in, and the Chelsea, like Arun said, Chelsea didn't do anything in the second half. They literally gave the ball to us and they said do something, and we couldn't do anything. And the one attack they did, they could have scored the third goal if it wasn't for Leno's brilliant save. So I don't know where we are going from here, but let's see.
So that is from the results point of view, Bob. But there was something more significant that happened, right? Like having the having the fans back in the stadium. I mean, we had it at the last game of the last season, but this is like truly back. To put it into a perspective, especially for me, right? I went back to the pub that I usually watch the game with other fans. That is something very unique after so long, and it felt like football is actually back. As a fan who has been back to who has been to the stadium, right? So what does this mean? Like, how is this going to impact, or is it not that much of a factor as we are talking about?
I mean, forget about the result which happened on the pitch. At least from what we saw on TV, the fans didn't really let the team down. That's probably one thing that I noticed. The fans were continuously cheering and they were really up for it, even though it was actually pouring down in the second half. They were trying to, cheer the team up to at least do something on the pitch. But sadly, that wasn't happening as we all saw it. So yes, the fans coming back was a real positive, and for a change, yes, the fans were very positive and they were really behind the team right from the word go. Irrespective of what the result was, there were actually some boos around in some sections of the crowd.
I think even Arteta touched on it, right? Like,
that's fair enough, right? I think it was not just about the result. If you had played a very thrilling game and then had you lost something, then I don't think those boos would have come on that day. But at least that there wasn't any intent, as what the guys have actually spoken about, which was prevalent as we saw, quite reflective in the crowd's mood as well towards the end of the game.
But like Bob, you mentioned, right, there were boos in the middle of the game, that is during the halftime and during the end time. And when this was asked to Arteta, I'm just trying to read what he said. Right, he was mentioning about it, and he was going on about, like, yes, obviously this was something that was bound to happen. It shows that the results are a displeasure to the crowd, to the Arsenal fan. So all these words that Arteta says are really like painting him as a very sane person, very sane manager. But let me just pivot a little bit about the game in general. The strategy, like, all of you were expecting a back three, and except me, I think I was the only one who was thinking like, oh no, we are still going to play back four. But all you three said that it's going to be a back three, and Chelsea came in, and it looked like back three would have worked, especially if we look back at the game. That looks like a strategy that would have worked. But Arteta stuck to being back four, and so there is a bit of a disconnect between what he's projecting as a person to what he's showing to us on the pitch. Do you feel that disconnect, or is this just me who is seeing it?
Arteta has been quite a good orator when it comes to talking to the media, and then he doesn't give much away, even when the team has been in shambles. We've seen Wenger doing that.
That's a great trade in itself, to be honest. No, we can call him interview merchant for all you want, but like in a situation like this, it's backfiring because the fans are already pissed. But imagine a situation where things are like, not this bad, then whatever he's saying would actually be music to our ears as fans, if you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. That's how we started, right? So
yeah. Sorry, Bob. Sorry to cut you off.
No, all good. So I was just going to say that, I think what you say is absolutely right. Maybe he's got a very good vision, but it's not getting translated onto the pitch in terms of the results or even the style of play that we are actually showing during the game. I sometimes feel confused in terms of, if you look at a player like, say, Tierney, for example, I get confused in terms of what his position is or what do you expect him to do. And if you look at both the goals, you can clearly show there was not any cover for Tierney, or even Osaka wasn't tracking back. And to be honest, I was quite confused in terms of what was the intent for both those players or what's being told to them. I noticed that something got changed in the second half for better. Or maybe the fact that Chelsea stopped playing, and then Chelsea knew the fact that nothing is going to happen out of this opponents that they were playing against. So they really didn't, probably turn up, or they just saved themselves for the next game to come. That was probably what I felt. But there wasn't any clear, pattern of play, or that anything that you could see that Arteta was trying to do this, but it's not working out due to the personnel not available. Like what the guys summed up, it was just boys against men. It was not about the player profile or what he can do. It's just not the intent. I don't think they are technically ready enough to actually face such an opposition, be it any opposition.
So let me ask this question, Deepak. Like, let me put it this way, right? Is this a plan failure or a player failure? So both the goals, the game, right? Because Arteta during his post-match interview said that we are missing 8 to 9 players, and so it seems like he's projecting it as a player failure, as in like unavailability or whatever, right? That's how it is being projected. Whereas the fans are saying that we are not able to see a set of play, we are not able to see something. So I am actually caught in between both, because I can see both sides of it, that it is a part of plan failure. Like, if you ask me, if all those players come back, what are we going to do, right? I don't know the answer yet, but
we
again,
are going to do the same thing, I would say.
Yeah,
I will say we will pass to Tierney will cross, and we will there will be no players in the box for that cross. Basically, that is what is happening right now. Even if Aubameyang is there, only thing, Partey would have made a difference, but the person who played in place of Partey, Lokanga, was our best player. So you cannot give that excuse as well. We missed Partey. He was like really good. But the thing is, Arteta is is so stubborn right now. Like, you can clearly see they're targeting Tierney. What you should do is ask Saka to track back, or put someone, or change something in game. His in-game tactics is like the worst in the league, I would say, right now. He doesn't change anything. He just sticks to his starting 11 and his plan. If it doesn't work, you are supposed to change it. Every single time James got the ball, he beat either Tierney, and he crossed the ball and he scored. So you think, what is the manager really doing in the sideline? Is he doing something to stop the flow of that attack or not? But unfortunately, he didn't do anything. The first 10 minutes, the tactics was really spot on. After that, Chelsea figured it out, what we were really trying to do. They just sat back. And
which was nothing.
They moved the ball to the right, and just they switched to the other wing, and all hell broke loose. Every single time they switched the ball, Tierney was nowhere to be seen, as well as Saka. That's it. We are open, literally open.
So
I felt that James was probably, in a training session all by himself. There was no one absolutely near him, anywhere near the vicinity.
No,
just one switch, he was open. That's it. That's it.
But that is the part that I'm failing to grasp there, right? Like, for example, as any player, that is something that we would be able to figure that out and kind of block that side. It doesn't have to be just the manager has to say, see what he's doing, do it, right? These are professional players who should be able to react to that situation. Is it so my question is is it, are our players not able to see it and react to it?
No, so I think that's my earlier point as well, Vijay, if you look at it. So there is clearly a loss of translation in terms of what the manager wants a player to do and what he is trying to do. I think I feel that he is not being clearly given instructed enough. Tierney, for example, he's not being instructed enough to do. Although you could say that his footballing brain would mean that he can react by himself, but I think it is sort of condescending to what probably I'm thinking from the outside, that it sort of locks on with what Arteta wants him to do during the game, and they both probably hasn't matched as far as what we see.
You're saying like players has to do themselves, do everything by themselves. Then why we need a manager?
No, not everything by themselves, but in game, right? Like Arun. So this question I have, right? Like because Arteta could make a brilliant plan on paper, right? He could make a brilliant plan on paper, and he could say that to the players. But at the end of the day, whatever happens on the pitch decides which plan we should take, right? And that needs to be that needs to be shared by the players too. The blame needs to be shared by the players too, especially in situations like, especially when the goals being scored are such simple goals. Like these are like training ground planned goals from Chelsea. Like, these are not like some kind of a freaky goal or something that we cannot stop or something that is very intricate passing. Nothing. This was like making Lukaku the bigger body in the center to hold the ball and then ping it to the left or their right, whatever, right? So my question is two ways. First of all, are the players are not capable of adapting to it? Or second part is, are the players afraid of adapting to the changes on the pitch, right? Are they still like, oh my god, if I do this, then I'm not following what the manager said, and if I'm not following what the manager said, I might be dropped or I might get into trouble? Is that what they are thinking?
I would like to see it in a way that players are not able to really get the instructions the manager is giving them. We said right at the beginning, we all of us wanted to play a back three, but then we started with a back four. I think at that point, like, we made it easy for Chelsea. Like, there was always attacks coming in. With that and what we saw on the pitch, for me, like, I think it's a situation. It's a situation of the manager's instructions not really translating properly to the players, and then not being able to comprehend it as well as he would have liked them to do. It's like watching a movie which was a brilliant idea in the director's head, but when it was on screen, it became a flop, and that's exactly what's happening. Whatever ideas Arteta might have in his head, it might be like, Pep Light or whatever it could be. But if the players are really not able to understand it, then there's something wrong in the way in which he's trying to inform them about what to do. Coming to the thing about being reactionary on the pitch, being reactionary on the pitch is not something that the players would do unless the manager tells them to do it. They won't do it. It's not. They're not supposed to do it. Number one, primarily because it's a set plan given by the manager with a certain number of plays that he would expect the team to do with the same way that they're playing, in a hope that it's going to yield results. Whatever the plan was for the Chelsea game, I don't know. I don't know why it involved Saka being so high up the pitch and leaving so many gaps. But that was probably a part of the plan which failed spectacularly. So again, this makes me think that it's a brilliant plan in Arteta's head, but when it really comes out on the pitch, it's not being understood by the players properly. Even after the changes, like if you say that he did speak to Saka or he was telling Saka to do something, did we see any effect of it on the pitch? No. Usually, teams have a captain, a very strong captain who acts as an intermediary between the players and the manager. So the captain is always involved in the tactics. He knows that this is what the manager's idea is and he wants to implement it. But unfortunately, we do not have proper captains. I know we can say Xhaka for all this thing, but have we ever seen him like going on and like saying anything on the pitch that could possibly make the team move forward in any way? No. So that's where I feel like it's even if the seniors are confused, then we cannot blame the younger players at all. Like if people who have been playing football for like a major part of their career are not able to understand what the manager is saying, not able to translate that into the pitch, you cannot expect the younger players to do anything. He's going to be a Saka or an ESR is always going to do at this point in time in his career. He's always going to do what the manager asks him to do. You cannot blame them for that. For me, it's like a huge plan failure, huge tactical planning failure. And the thing is, like, at the Emery situation was very similar to this. He lost the dressing room and the senior players refused. And it's going towards that again, So it's not the younger players, it's the senior players. So that is where I feel like it's a plan failure.
That is interesting. But again, Deepak, about the goals, you actually touched upon Mari a little bit. But did you see his stats after the game? Actually, his stats after the game was not bad. It went like he went on, like he did 2 interceptions. He won 50% of his aerial duels with Lukaku. But eye test, we know that Mari has been bad. And the other side of it is like, we don't have any other player to play there.
Yeah, Mari, Mari wasn't that bad, I would say. Like, he did whatever he could, like against Lukaku. Lukaku is like now the premium forward in international football, almost on par with Kane. He would like bully any defender right now in the Premier League, even Van Dijk he would. So blaming just this defeat entirely on Mari is like just plain stupidity. My problem was entirely with Katie. He was nowhere to be seen defensively. The combination of Mari and Katie is like proving to be suicidal right now. Katie is almost in the attacking pitch, and Mari doesn't have pace. You cannot expect Mari to cover the entire pitch against Lukaku or like cover him. So you need to provide a little bit cover for him, which is Xhaka. He doesn't have any pace, or he doesn't have the strength to hold Lukaku. So basically, it is down to the tactics and the personnel which we are just able to play. If it was Gabriel, probably we might have done better, but still, it is not a guarantee whether we would do.
There were reactions coming at that point in time, I think over the weekend, in comparisons to how Mari performed during the game, and then how similarly on a higher note that Saliba has been commanding the defense in Marseille. So and then there were talks about us letting us the wrong person out, which seems to be the case. If you look at least a small comparison, it's been happening.
Well, like, do you really believe that like I know I've gotten a lot of flack for this, but do you really believe that like Saliba being there would have made any difference?
No.
So see,
that's the thing. Like, I don't understand that.
As Deepak was saying, right? It's about like I mean, Lukaku. I believe that he is the premium forward right now. Like, especially with Lewandowski becoming like older every year, and Ronaldo getting into the last years of it. So I think right now, of all the forwards in the world football, Lukaku is a premium. And also this Chelsea team right now, if Manchester City is not going to sign Kane, this Chelsea team is winning the PL, or they are the strongest contender than City or Liverpool.
No,
right?
I tend to be different here. I think it's just a mentality that we showed, which made Chelsea more dominant than what they are. I mean, I don't undermine the fact that they are actually a very good team and they'll go on to do good things this season. But that's still not an excuse for us to not turn up during a game.
No, I'm not saying it about like whether we turned up or this game, but I'm saying like
I think it was more looking like we considered the game even before it kicked off, sort of a thing. Chelsea were good, but we could have still, with the team that we put up there on Sunday, we could have still done a better job, is what I felt. We could have still shut out Lukaku had we been more disciplined and had we been more targeted in terms of the way that we are going to face him. And since there wasn't any game plan, the players didn't know what to do. That's it.
But to continue on the game, right, Arun, there was an incident where we could have scored. I mean, apart from that holding header, which was actually a good chance, but it happens, right? Sometimes we miss the headers. That's fine. But there was an incident when Saka went on a run and he was brought down in the in the box. It looked like a really good penalty, and even VAR went in and saw it and just turned it around. Especially since last season we were very, very unlucky with how our penalties were awarded. Right, there was one game when David Luiz's knee kind of crossed. Yeah, and we were given a penalty. I mean, I'm not saying that would have changed how the game went on. They were still on gear 2. They could have moved to another gear and scored one more goal. There was nothing like that. But at least we would have broken the duck. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say it that way, yeah, a penalty could have possibly given a goal and broken that up. But really, I think by now we are used to the fact that we are not just playing against 11 people. You know, like there is this VAR thing that has not been working properly for us and for other teams as well, for that matter, right? So it's something that I think like we should be able to accept and move on. It's not something that I think we as fans tend to look too much into, and when it doesn't work for us we tend to get feel like victimized, which is very normal, and that comes out as stronger emotions, especially when the team is not playing well or we're not scoring goals. Like like you said, leave the penalty out. There could have been so many things that happened in the game for them to be able to score, to break that duck, score that goal, but we didn't do it. Leave the holding header out. Apart from these two, can you think of any chance that we created that could have gotten us a goal? Uh,
Not
that's the thing.
really.
So like it's there could have been so many ifs and buts, but I really don't think like this is something that we should not be looking too much into. Yes, VAR is not proper, but we are not the only ones who are being, I wouldn't say affected by VAR, but like we're not the only ones who are being like exposed to VAR, right? It's the same common thing for everybody in the PL. And cumulatively, like we all say, from Wenger and Fergie's times, cumulatively it all adds up. It evens out at the end. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much thing to the VAR, but I would have definitely expected the team to do much more, and always sort of consider VAR and their own players as part of the opposition.
Mhm. So apart from that, Bob, right? Like apart from the war incident, what are the positive things that were happening in the game for you? Like I remember that Lokonga guy, Sambi Lokonga, he has been looking good in both the games. I'm pretty sure he's going to be. He looks from an eye test, right? It's not like he's not giving us the. We are not looking through the Arsenal eyes. Even my friends who are Chelsea fans said like, oh, he looked good, right? So that part of it was good. And when Aubameyang came on, I thought he looked hungry. So is there any other positives that you saw out of the game?
Yeah, and I felt probably after the first game, Leno has been a bit more sharper. You couldn't really blame him for the goals, that he conceded. It's the same result, but I felt that he showed a different mentality this game. Which one thing that I noticed, Saka was. I mean, if I were to just judge based on Chelsea game, Saka sort of regressed. Maybe that could be due to the fact that he had such a defensive, defensive wall behind him during the England games, and then for Arsenal, it's going to be always different, right? So there's more expectations for him to do. So he has to reset his mindset to come back into Arsenal mode, and then start being more in the back, and then as well as in the front. Apart from that, again, Martinelli regressed as we all spoke about, but he had. I can't really single out anyone to say they've been doing better than what they were. I felt probably after the first game, Tierney as well was, he as well regressed, which we all, touched upon. So, I don't really have anything more to say in terms of the players, who perform.
But now that we have a EFL game coming up, right? I will hold you there. EFL game is coming up, so this is a must win for now. Like not just for the team, for Arteta, right? It's against Championship club. They are not going to take this seriously, from what I can see, because they have to target their championship. They are going to go for the promotion, so they might play a second string, and our second string is kind of our first string right now. So what are your thoughts on this coming EFL game? I mean, we are recording just before the.
They are literally 2 positions below us. That's it. We are 19th, they are second.
That's a
very good one.
So Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we could.
And I think it's sorry, Bob. Like I think it's also because we need to score a goal to avoid the shame of featuring something from the training sessions as the goal of the month. So that's a lot of expectations. I don't think we've ever went into an EFL game with so many expectations.
So yeah, go ahead, Bob.
So I was gonna say there will be a few people, few names would be giving the nod. I feel Nelson would be coming in at some point, and so would be Odegaard. And I feel Ramsdale could make his debut there. So there are actually a few debuts to actually look out for. I mean, technically Odegaard has had a debut in an Arsenal shirt, so I don't know whether it would be second homecoming or not. But I feel it would be sort of a strong lineup against West Bromwich, because partly to the fact that's what the guys touched upon. Our second string is the first string, so we don't really have much options on the bench as such. Apart from who do we have in the field?
Elneny might start.
Yeah, Elneny might start, and if at all, is touted move to other club is progressing, then he probably would as well get dropped off. But yeah, we could expect to see a very strong lineup. I don't know how the results would go, because none of us could even go on to the prediction mode yet. Even Arteta, the players wouldn't know what they are going to play or how they are going to play. Arteta probably would know, but yeah, I don't think that would be really getting onto the pitch. But yeah, I expect to see a strong lineup.
So Deepak, you mentioned that they are just 2 positions or 3 positions below us. But this position, whatever we are in, right? It is very early. It is very early in the season, and it's not like we have been in a decline and then like suddenly this season we are still in decline. We had a very strong finish to the last season, although that is after we are out of all the stress and everything. But still, we went there and put those points on table, right? If we and then we had a very disappointing preseason. How much do you take out of preseason is something, and then these 2 games have been disappointment.
We haven't won a game, if you see, like for some long time, some months.
But then again, right? But then again, were we really expecting to win against Chelsea or City? No. So the only loss that actually mattered was against Brentford, which we should have won, but we lost. So it's like, if you consider a season, if I ask you right now, in this season, what are the games that you would lose, right? Chelsea would be 1, City would be 1, United probably, Liverpool probably.
Do
right?
the reverse, Vijay. Talk about the games that we could beat.
No, but then again, right? So it's not like all doom and gloom, but it feels like for Arteta, it is kind of a litmus test right now. So if I ask you the question, what is the tipping point for Arteta in Arsenal? Would you say if he lost this game and if he lost against City, that's it? Or...
If he loses against West Brom, I think it would be like tough for him to justify what he's doing.
True.
I think he has to win the West Brom. If he loses that one, I think he probably might get fired. There will be like too much of fan pressure in the social media and stuff. He better win that game. That would be like really bad. So City game is obvious write-off. No one expects us to win City game. But the thing is, after that, who we face? I think we face Norwich, Burnley. Then we have the North London
Derby. Yeah.
These are like winnable games. North London Derby is the one which we play at home. He should definitely win it. So I feel there shouldn't be any tipping point. For him, every game should be like I feel like every game after the City game should be like, if he loses, he should be like scrutinized, because these are the games which you should win, like Norwich, Burnley, Brighton, and Villa. Yeah, even Aston Villa, we lost previous season, but still you are expected to turn up against Villa.
Mm-hmm.
The only game I see until Liverpool is Leicester City away, which is a tough game. The rest of the games he should be winning, and he should be having.
Villa is a bit of another tough game at home.
That is also still a home game, but
home game, yeah.
Yeah, but our home form is like shit. But still, he should. On paper, these are the games which he should win. We are saying like Arteta's team turns up against Big Six teams, which is not happening in this season. So at least he should turn up against the team which we are expected to win. So it should not be like we are giving time until this game. It should be every single game after City game. He should win. Let's say like we win against Norwich. It shouldn't be like he gets time till Leicester. What if he goes and we lose against Burnley? We take one step forward and like take two steps backward. It doesn't make sense at all. So it should be like every single game we have to turn up and win these points, take points.
Mhm.
If you ask for a specific tipping point, probably till Watford game, which is we have an international break, I believe, till Liverpool. Yeah. So if we should have at least 15 points, 5 wins. It is not too much of an ask. We can win against Norwich, Burnley, Tottenham. Let's leave North London. Brighton, Crystal Palace, and Villa and Watford. Actually, he should get 18 points if I say.
That's a very good way of looking at it. I mean, that's a very practical way of looking at it. But Arun, do you see this happening? Like, is there going to be a scrutiny? I mean, there is one thing as expectation and there is one thing as reality, especially in a season where we have where the owners have backed him so heavily, like given him 120,000 kitty till now on the players, and these are not proven players; these are like young players that he has brought in. So, so do you see actually this? Although it makes sense, whatever Deepak said makes sense that every game has to be scrutinized. Do you see that happening in person?
Ideally, it should, and I think there would be scrutiny because the board has invested. Like they've given him the kind of profile of players that he wanted. Ben White was a signing that was made, a statistical signing made like to find the right kind of fit player for this system that we are playing under Arteta. So that's basically a signing that Arteta wanted. And given that we are like trying to get rid of all these deadwood, and these deadwood being people signed by the previous managers who don't seem to fit in Arteta's plans at all, we are doing sort of it's the first step of an overall, if you could call it. So we can keep saying that there's still a right back that we need, there's still a defensive midfielder we need, Xhaka's not up to the mark and all that. But if you're not able to give the confidence to the board that in spite of investing 120 million, like you said, you're not able to like give any confidence in terms of the results or like things that happen on the pitch, then why should the board continue to like support you for another window, knowing that is probably again going to like probably going to have another write-off season, which could become the case. Like if 120 million doesn't work now, they're not going to pump in another 120 million in the winter, right? So ideally there should be scrutiny. The board, it's someone needs to be held accountable, and then right now, and I think the best person to be held accountable in any club is the manager first. He's the one who gets sacked, he's the one who gets the plaudits. So when we really see, I totally agree with Deepak. For me in my head as well, Watford is like the point where the club should like really say, you have not got the 15 to 18 points that you're expected to get during this period. If you're not really showing it, what is progress according to your words? Like there should be some definition of the progress that we keep making, or the project and the plan. There should be some short-term goals. Short-term goal is we have to be here at this point in time. If that is not really defined, if that is not like really showing, instead, if we get blanket statements like this project is going to take time, any project takes time, but we want to be there to see the fruition, right? So, Watford for me, there should be scrutiny. He should be held accountable. If things don't improve by Watford, if we not get 15, 18 points by Watford, there's no point. If he's not going to be able to change anything after.
So Bob, let me finish this Arteta conversation with you, right? Because it seems like he also met with Josh Kroenke recently. There seemed to be a meeting
during the weekend.
Yeah, and even after that, I think there were news about like that Arteta having a meeting with Josh in his London hotel or something, and then coming out of it. So there are two sides of it, right? Like I think the Kroenkes want Arsenal to get back because they know that Super League is coming up at some time, not right now, but some kind of a Super League kind of thing might come up. That's why I think they are pumping in this money to get Arsenal up there, or else we are missing out. Right now, or if right now there is going to be a Super League that's going to be forming, Arsenal is going to miss out. Right?
Right now we'll be there in the Championship Super League.
No, but always there.
But seriously, right? That has to be one of the driving factors for the whatever we talk about it. Stan and Josh, they are KSE themselves want more money out of Arsenal. They want this to be a successful business, and for it to be a successful business, it has to be successful on the pitch, right? And we have been unsuccessful for a long time now. If we consider like 5, no, what was that? 6, 5, 6, 8, 8. That's what our last positions have been. So we have not been successful in a long time. So what is going to be the criteria? Is this going to happen? Like, will we be ready to sack Arteta if things don't turn up?
Yeah, so I think I've been seeing a lot of people mention about Antonio Conte on Twitter. And I was just wondering, what are these people really thinking about Conte? Now, Conte is a very good manager, and no disregards to him, he's been doing very good. But he is very authoritative, as what people have spoken in length about wherever he has managed in the past. And probably the reason as to why he got booted out of Chelsea as well, even after winning the league. So the thing is, for his methods to work, he would want specific set of personnel and specific set of people to work. If not, he would be really walking out of the team. And that's probably the reason as to why Tottenham weren't able to convince him, because he was not convinced with the money on play or what he can actually spend on, or the type of command that he would be getting at the players. And if what all Arteta gets the boot, and people say, Conte would be available to say, I don't think that's actually putting out into a possibility, because, at least from what we know at this point, because the board has already spent about 129 million on players at this point. They wouldn't really want to invest more than a 50 million or so in the next window. I'm talking about the next major transfer window, considering that the players that we have brought are for the future. So which means that even if we were to convince Conte to come, he would be coming in middle of a season where he would just have to work with the players that were signed. Maybe that's the players that he would really want to work with. I'm not sure, but he walked out of that Inter team because they said they were going to actually offload some of these players. We've seen that they've offloaded their star striker and their star right back as such. But even with that team, even with those positions being sold, he simply chose to walk away from Inter as such, after winning the league for more than like 10 years gap, or more than a 10 years gap. So for them, I don't think Conte realizing into a possibility.
No, but before we talk about Conte, right? My question is like, are we going to sack Arteta? Because that is what the question is, right? Like,
I got drifted away, isn't it? Sorry, I think yes. What the guys mentioned was pretty much true. We'll look at until the first international break and in September or October, mid. I'm not sure exactly.
November. That is second international break.
Right. Okay. So possibly that's when we would be getting a good picture in terms of where we are regressing. But there will be pressure on Arteta after every game. I felt, so would be on Edu. There's been already reports circulating that Edu is under immense pressure that he would be possibly getting the boot sooner than Arteta.
Mm-hmm. So anyways, let's wrap the Arteta discussion. We do have more stuff to come about that. So let me pull back a little bit on the transfer side of things. So there seems to be some movement in the out positions from Arsenal, right? I'm hearing news that Lucas Torreira is in Italy. Bob, any idea on that?
Yeah, so he's already landed in Florence now. So he's planning to undergo a medical today or tomorrow, I think. And once that goes through, there will be an initial loan of 1.5 million euros with an obligation to buy. I'm not exactly sure. There's been some contrasting reports coming out that it's going to be a 15 million obligation to buy, or some say that it's a mandatory clause to buy. And then as well as on the buy clause, some say it's 15 million pounds and some say it's 15 million euros, but I'm not sure which one is true. But all in all, he's actually out of the door. He's going to Fiorentina.
Mm-hmm. And regarding the other news was regarding, what's his name? Kolasinac moving somewhere in Turkey.
Fenerbahce, yes. Yes, so I think there's been, Ozil has been prime factor behind those talks as what I've read through. And talks have been progressing. It's possibly coming to a stage where we would have to let the player go on free and then he would go on to join. Yeah, so that's what is
and also there was rumors about
The main
Bayern.
guy, Willian. What about Willian?
Yeah, Willian. Yeah, okay. Go ahead with Willian.
Willian looks more closer. So Corinthians is looking to sign him. His priority was to stay in Europe and then find some other European clubs. But then once Corinthians came in, his dad has been really pursuing him to sign for them. To make the matters more worse for Arsenal, they're going to sweeten the deal by subsidizing some of his wages, so which means that we are going to be doing a payout just like what we did for Ozil.
Yeah, okay. But then
Another masterstroke by
disaster signing.
Sorry, Deepak, go ahead.
Turned out to be a disaster signing.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
you could
to be
say
one
that
of
one more
those
time.
on top.
Yeah, you could say that one more time. But again, there's also talks about Bayern going out. That he missed out the game because he is somewhere else. Spain, is it, or is there any news to it?
No, there's not been any legs to that story so far, So there's been all rumors are going around. There's not been any concrete links for Bayern to any club at the moment, as far as what we know. But I think that could soon escalate in the closing stages of the window.
Yeah, and one more thing was I heard that Crystal Palace wants Eddie Nketiah on permanent deal.
Please take him.
Yeah, so I think there's been again lots of talks going on around that. Crystal Palace are offering, I think, 10 million pounds for it, which Arsenal are not really okay to accept at this point. They would want a higher pay. But as far as what I can see, there's been interest in him from other clubs like Palace, as you mentioned, but it has not fruited into an offer. It could definitely start coming out in the next few days, because he's entering towards the last year of his contract, so it's just a matter of time before we let him out.
There was a meme going on about like instead of asking for money, let's do a swap deal for Vieira and Arteta. That's all.
He won't do anything. He's also an unproven manager.
Yeah, I mean, Vieira's also an unproven manager. Like, did he win the league in France? No.
No, I get it. So that's all the transfer rumors that I think I was having. Is there anything else that you guys heard about Arsenal?
Nothing on Runarsson yet. Runarsson is still with the squad. So is Bayern, as we touched upon.
There is one more signing that we could make, and that is going to be Cristiano Ronaldo coming to Arsenal to play.
I don't think we can say anything about this to finish the podcast in a better way. The dream of landing Cristiano Ronaldo after failing to land Messi. Arsenal make bold bids.
But yeah, anyways, guys, it's been a really nice one. We have, I think, at least now we would. I'm not going to ask you for predictions for the League Cup game. Absolutely no way. We are not doing predictions for League Cup game. We are not doing previews for League Cup game.
I want at least a goal.
One goal.
Yes.
So, anyways, it's been a nice pod, guys. Thank you, Arun, again for joining in from Butter London. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Bob. And guys, please share, like, and subscribe. That's all we could say from us today here at the Away Gunners podcast. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
And that is the end of the pod. For more Arsenal-related content, please like, subscribe, and share to the Away Gunners podcast. See you next week.